Welcome back to another lesson on Windows PowerShell. In the past few tutorials, I have been going over in detail how PowerShell operators work. In this tutorial, I will go over logical operators. Please keep in mind, this tutorial series is made for beginners to PowerShell but can be useful for anyone who is looking to learn something new. So let's get right into it. Logical operators evaluate basically two or more comparisons or other operators that produce a Boolean result. In other words, logical operators are looking for either a true or a false, because logical operators includes and, or, exclusive or, not, etc., etc. So this lesson is going to be a very brief lesson because it is very easy concept for anybody who understands basic math from elementary school would be able to understand how logical operations work, because it's either true or false. It's basically a Boolean result that we are looking for, and we are just comparing typically two things together. So let's start with the AND operator. So the AND operator returns true if the value on the left hand and right hand side are both happen to be true. So what does that mean? Like, for example, if I actually use the true, remember TRUE, true. See the color change on our Visual Studio Code with PowerShell add-on. It changed from the color changed from that light blue. That means true is a already built in or baked in variable in your Windows PowerShell 7. So if I compare true with the operator and with another true, what this will result in the terminal over down here is true, because this is true. And how you use logical operators, notice that with a dash. So the logical operators in here, we are using the switch method, switch way of selecting those logical operators. So I'm selecting the AND operator. So we are checking if true and the true will, what will it will give us. So it will give us true. So right here, it gave us the true value. So you can see here, I can run it again. There you go. It shows true here. Now because of this left hand side is being compared to right hand side, and because we are using AND notation, it is returning back true, because this is this and this is the same. Yeah, it is. So it's going to return true. So in other words, logical operators basically comparing two different things, or from left to right. Like, for example, I can select multiple things on the left hand side. I can put multiple statements on the left hand side and multiple statements on the right hand side, and if I compare those two together with logical operator, and for example, we can get results from that as well. For example, let's say 1, and I'm going to switch the operator less than, like LT is less than, remember, which I already covered in my previous tutorials, to 2. Is it true? Yeah, 1 is less than equal to 2. But I also want to use another operator called AND, which is a logical operator, thinking about the overall picture of left hand side now and the right hand side. And I'm going to go string. It's a string value dash like, and we can put S star, something like that. So what this is basically saying there are multiple operators combined here to get a result, whether true or false, and it is returned back as true, because is 1 is less than or less than 2. Yeah, that's correct. And on the right hand side of this AND operator, we have a string, and is string is like this string. So is these two are the same? Like, is these two a valid statement with the like switch? The answer is yes. So in this example, this is a little bit of a complex example that I just want to show you that you can use operators with multiple combinations and get the expected result. In this case, it's true because between this AND operator, left hand side and right hand side, this is a string, and this is like it has this s in here and then a value in here. So this is a valid statement. This is a valid statement. As a result, it will spit it out as true. Here's another example. I can put 1 and then I can put switch equal. Is 1 equal to 1? And I'm gonna play with the AND operator. 2 dash equal to 2. And I can use another AND operator. And I can put 3 is equal to 3. And all of these statements are correct. So at each step, we have two operators in both sides. And for example, in here, in this AND, we have two operators equal, and then this, they're evaluating these two statements on the left hand side and the right hand side. And in this AND, we are evaluating the left hand side and right hand side of this part of the statement. And then we have these equal switches between numbers. So is 1 is equal to 1? Yes. 2 is equal to 2? Yes. 3 is equal to 3? Yes. And if all these statements are correct, our answer, what we should be expecting, is true. But if I change, let's say if I change this value to 4, the answer that we are expecting here is false. And it did come back as false. Why? Because 4 is not equal to 3, and therefore the false gets spit out. So when it's come to the point logical operator, what I want you to understand is even if you combine multiple operators where there is a logical operator, it takes pretty much the precedence and it will spit it out whether the logical operators are true or false. So in this case, the AND statement basically gonna give us that, output that expected in here. So, and in the beginning we had 1 and 1 and 2 and 2, 3 and 3, they are all equal, and but if one of these statements become false, is spit it out as false, right? Right, that's what happened here. So if you change this AND to OR, for example, and if I run this same statement, now 4 is not equal to 3, the answer gonna switch back to true. The reason for that is, if you have studied AND or OR in your elementary school or high school, remember AND mean statement on the left hand side and the statement on the right hand side both has to be true in order for AND to be true. But OR does not have to do that. One of these statements on the left hand side or right hand side has to be true in OR statement. Therefore, these statements become true when you evaluate this long statement right here. So next thing I'm going to talk about is OR operator, the one that I discussed briefly up here. So I'm going to switch this back to AND because that's what we discussed. So the next one we're going to talk about is the OR operator, since I mentioned OR already. So the OR operator returns true if the values on the left or the values on the right happen to be true, or the both statements are true. So remember, when I switch this thing into OR, it's still a valid statement because this statement is true. It doesn't have to be, the other statement doesn't have to be true with the OR, right? So that is what we are evaluating with the OR statement. For example, if I still use the same thing right here, the true, this same thing, and if I switch this, if I change this switch from AND to OR, this statement still will spit it out as true because at least one of the side is true. If I change this to false, one of the statement, it will still spit it out as true. So unlike the AND statement, the true statement will spit it out true if one side of the evaluating statements on left hand side or the right hand side happen to be true. So because one side is true here, it doesn't really matter if the other side is false, it will still spit it out as true. Now The other things we can look at with the or statement, let's go with the number value. So let's say 2 is greater than, and then if we go with 1, and if I use the or statement in this middle, and then if I put something, so it's just a string, and if I go this is not equal to, and then if I go nothing, what would you expect this statement to spit it out? Remember, we are interested in this or statement because we are looking at logical operators today. I already covered the greater than or in not equal to. So recall from your previous tutorial which I covered these statements. What would you expect to spit it out? So what we need to do is you have to look at your left hand side of or and your right hand side of or and see what these statements going to do. So I'm going to clear the screen quickly. So now, is 2 is greater than 1? Yes, that's true. Is something is not equal to nothing? Yeah, it's like, so it's one of the statement is true, it's going to spit it out as true, so that we expect true and we got true. So if we just use even just numbers, so 1 equal to 1, all right, and I'm going to use the or statement and I'm going to say 2 equal to 1. Well, this is incorrect. 2 is not equal to 1. However, because 1 is equal to 1, it will spit it out as true. Now, if I put 2 here, it will spit it out as false because now none of the statements are true. So in this situation, one of the statements, left-hand side statement, happened to be true because it came back true. But in this statement, it is none of the statements are true, it came back as false. But if I switch the right-hand statement to value in here 2, now the 2 is equal to 2. And this or statement now have a satisfaction on the right-hand side. There's a satisfactory answer on the right-hand side because 2 is equal to 2 on the right-hand side. Even though 2 is not equal to 1 on the left-hand side, it will return true. So what I want you to understand in this concept is that it is basically checking 2 items and then seeing if these are evaluating to be a true or a false. And another unique thing about this that I want to point out is very interesting is, let's look at this and or from a point of view of writing a PowerShell 7 script, because the whole idea about I'm trying to build the foundation of PowerShell basic concepts is so that when you go out to work in the IT field, that you know how to write a complex PowerShell script. So a practical example of using true and an or statement would be looking at different parts of your computer and you want to evaluate if something has changed, or looking at 2 different parts and see if it is true or false. I can give an example of this. Let's look at this one. So I'm going to open with a bracket and I'm going to start test dash path. So test path is it's a built-in item in your PowerShell. So I'm going to use test path, and then I'm going to go C. Test path is basically give you an option to add a path of your Windows machine with Windows PowerShell if you're running PowerShell on Windows. So if I go Windows, so I want to compare that test path with an operator. Let's say an operator. That's the first one shows up there. So let's go with an operator, and I'm going to do another test path, and I'm going to compare that test path with another one called let's say C program files. So let's get program file. This path has to have the string configuration, otherwise it won't work. So I made a mistake there. So we have a test path, make sure it is string, so you have the command, the quotation marks, otherwise it can't see this test path. So initially I had like that, that's incorrect. You need to have that quotation mark. So what they're doing is they're taking information from that folder location and comparing it to this folder location. Now if I run this, what it's going to spit it out is true, because if this one has some information, like is it evaluating this location against this evaluation against that location, but they're just looking at if this actually, you know, exists or something like that, right? However, you can also do the same thing with OR as well. So I can switch this with OR, and if I just run that, it should also spit it out true. And also, you know, you can do a lot with it, like your test path in here can be used for security checks on your scripts. Like if you're working with different, like for example, like we go C Windows, this is basically going to check if the path exists, right? So this is basically checking if the path exists. So if I do this, and if I put OR in here, and if I go test path, and I'm going to test the path if this path exists on, or file location exists with the, oh, don't do test path. Let's see something doesn't exist that actually valid, like D Windows. Because I don't have D Windows, but I do have C Windows, this will still return as true, as because this is, you know, if the D window does, even though C Windows exists, the D window doesn't exist, and it still satisfies the OR logical operator, right? Now, if I change this now to AND, remember, now the C Windows location does exist. So if you are writing a script and looking for this folder path and folder location, and the information contains within this folder, if this folder exists, this is going to return false, because the reason that the D folder path does not exist. There you go, false. So logical operators on complex PowerShell scripts can be used to, you know, do checkpoints on your PowerShell script. So before I run a PowerShell script, for example, I can go and check if the C folder path exists and against the D folder path, for example. And with the AND operator, if these two paths are not it doesn't exist on the left hand side and right hand side, I can say break away from the script and stop running the script. So if these two, so remember in the AND operator at the very beginning, I said both left hand side and the right hand side has to be satisfactory in order for it to run. But the OR operator, if I run this same thing with the OR in it, it only need to have one of these locations satisfied, and then you can proceed with the true statement. So for example, if I run both of these together, one will return true, the other one is false. So first one is false because both two has to be true. In order to be true here, it's false. But only one of these has to be true. One of these location has to exist in order to get a true statement from an OR logical operator, and it come back as true. Again, at the end of the this tutorial, I will quickly summarize, you know, differences in OR and AND. But I assume you already know these things because this is a elementary school level mathematics. The OR and AND works exactly the same way you learn in math class in Windows PowerShell, because, well, computer science is basically you know, math, right? So now here's another thing associated with the items that I just discussed. Those are exclusive functions, exclusive operators. So for example, this one, that is an exclusive OR. So the exclusive OR operator, for example, will return true if either value on the left is true or the value on the right is true, but not both true. So again, you need to wrap these things around your head. Like for example, if I go true, 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 and if I use exclusive OR, and if I go in this side false, I expect this to return to be true. So this statement going to be true, that's fine. But if I put true in here, I expect the return statement to be false, because in exclusive OR, it says exclusively one side has to be true. It's going to return false because one side is true, the other side is also true, but you can have both sides true, so it's going to return false. So that's what basically the exclusive OR is doing. And this is an important concept you should understand as well. because they do come into play when you're writing advanced PowerShell scripts or intermediate PowerShell script that we will go over later in this series or next series that I will be creating. For example, if I evaluate value 1 to value 2, and if I use exclusive OR, remember exclusive OR mean only one side can be true. You can have both sides true, and this statement, well, it works exactly what it says. So this should return true because it's only one side is true. One is less than 2, but one is not equal to true, so it will return as such. And again, you can use with Windows paths as well. So if I go test path, and if I evaluate in test path C Windows, so I'm going to look for C Windows, but I'm going to use exclusive OR in this situation. And I want to test path D Windows. So my D Windows doesn't exist. There's no such thing called D Windows in this computer, and this will return definitely true. There you go, true. But if I change this to C Windows, both sides are true now, but it has to be exclusive true, or it's going to return false. So again, if you don't remember logical operators from your elementary school or junior high school, just go over those notes, because the same principles that you have learned in class, in your elementary school, junior high school classes, applied to our our Windows PowerShell or any other scripting or programming environment. Now the next one I want to point out is the not. The not can be used with this. Sorry, I'm typing on the wrong place. So not can be like this. So that is a valid way of saying not something. Or you can also use this symbol. It's a shift 1 on the on US keyboards, US English keyboards. So that is mean not, as well as that switch also mean not. So what not operator is used to is to create a negate the expression that it follows it. Like for example, if I put not false, what it's doing is basically taking this false and converting into a true. There you go. It's took the false and converted into a true. So what it's doing is it's doing the negate, like opposite of what is being shown here. So that's what the not do. Like for example, if I do not, and if I go test path, and if I go test path X, the X doesn't exist, but it's gonna still return true because it is switching the thing around. So if it is true, like for example, if I put the test path, this path, which does exist, and it should return, it should return false, because it's flipping the true statement to a false statement by not adding not in here, right? And again, I will show you another example of it. If I go not in here, and if I go true, TRUE, and if I go and if I go false, so it's a little bit of a tiny bit intermediate complex statement here. So what I have is true and false here, and both we are using and not or, so both has to be true in order for this statement to be true. So this is false right now, but because we are flipping it over here, what that will happen is it's returned back as true. I'm going to clear this screen actually. So when you're reading a script, especially for your exams, if you're writing any PowerShell exams at school, you first evaluate whatever in this bracket actually, if you see a statement like this. So you look, it's an AND statement. So true and true will give us a true. False and false and give us a true with the AND statement, right? Because in AND, left hand side and the right hand side both has to be the same to be in order to get a true statement. However, now we have true on the left hand side, we have a false on the right hand side. So now we have a false statement. It will spit out false here, but we are flipping it here with the not logical operator. So as a result, you're gonna get a true statement even though this statement is false. And if I switch this to OR, for example, now this is a true statement, but we are flipping the true statement to a false statement, you're gonna get a false here with the not operator right here. So again, when you have AND statement, you look at these two, it's not true, it's false, but if flip it and gave us a true. When you have an AND statement in here, it is true in this statement, but we are flipping it here again and it gives us a false. So we expect that, and that's what we got. And again, that can be very useful in certain situations, and that's why we use it. And I also said you can use this symbol like shift 1 exclamation mark on the US keyboards, US English keyboards, that will also say the not. So how do you do that? You put the not there, you start with the bracket or whatever, and you start with true. So you can do whatever you like. I'm just doing true, and I go to and if I go false, oh sorry, go $false. These two are the same thing. This one happened to use the switch not, this one happened to use the symbol not. At the end of the day, this will both spit it out the same answer. So this is true, and if I run this, and this will also true. So this gave me the same expected result as this one, because exclamation mark on Windows PowerShell is same as saying not. So the not will flip the condition in which it is evaluating. So again, if I run these two together, these are both exact same statement, and I expect both of them to be true because it's exact same statement. One happened to use the symbol not, and the other one happened to use the switch not. So that's another thing I want to point out. So having said that, let's move on to the next one. I'm gonna clear the screen, move this a little bit higher up. So next one I want to talk to you about is something called the double negatives. This would be the last one I'm going to discuss. So the double negative is the can be used with it's like the not operator that has an important place in, but worth thinking about injecting into like a double negative situations. So let's look at this not and then think about how we can use it in a double negative situation. So if I put like not, for example, so which means I'm flipping something, and if I put 1, NE stand for not equal to 1. So what happened is it is creating that double negative situation. This is like what I just described above here is something called a double negative. So if I put it, it will come back as true because 1 is not equal to 1. It's false, but because of a not at the front, because of a double negative, it's gonna flip that thing around. So that's a very important operator, a very important logical operator. A lot of people forget, don't think about. That's very important that you understand how it works when you are writing complex scripts. So it sounds like I'm going over like such a simple concept, but trust me, some of you, when you start writing exams, you might run into double negative scripts where you have to evaluate on piece of paper. Like if you're going to University of Calgary, for example, University of Calgary computer science exams are paper based. It's not computer based. They don't give you a integrated scripting environment, ISE, to do your exams. They will give you a script like this and say A, B, C, D answers. So make sure don't get mixed up with double negatives. So remember, 1 and 1 is false. It is not, it is the same, so it's false. But because of this flip, that switch, please keep in mind that it become a true as a result of that. It might come up on your exam. It did come up on my exams on both University of Calgary and SAT and a bunch of other courses that I have taken. So keep that in mind. So that's just something I want to highlight there. And the thing is, if I flip this into equal, obviously it will it will flip this statement from true to a false, because now what happened is 1 is in fact equal to 1, but because of the double negative happening here, because of this not, or you can just go with that, remember, you can go with that symbol. It will also give you that false statement because we are flipping that over. So that's everything for today for logical operators. Again, I want to go over this quickly to give you a brief explanation of what we have covered. Again, this is basic math, and if you understand how logical operators works from your previous classes or previous scripting or programming classes, this would be a piece of cake. So this is a very short tutorial. It doesn't need to be even 30 minutes long, but unfortunately it is. What you need to remember is how AND operators work. Again, in AND operators, both left hand side and the right hand side of the operator has to be true in order to get a true statement. If one of these statements become false, AND will spit it out a false. OR statement, only one side of the statement has to be true or false. So if one side is evaluated to be true, the OR statement will spit it out a true. In AND, both sides has to be true, evaluated to be correct on the both side in order to have a true. And then exclusive OR, only one side can be true. If both sides is true, it will not spit it out true. Because in OR statement, if both sides are true, it will spit it out true. So again, I'm going to repeat that again. AND statement, only to spit it out true if both sides of the AND statements are true. So AND statement only spit it out true if both sides of the statement in AND is true. OR statement, if one side is true, whether left hand side or right hand side, it doesn't matter. If one of the sides is true, OR statement will spit it out true. Exclusive OR is similar to AND. It will only spit it out is one of the statements is true. It's not actually similar to AND, it's actually similar to OR, that's why it's exclusive OR. It's one of the statement on the left hand side or right hand side is actually true. I misspoke a little bit. It will spit it out true. However, if both sides are true, it will not spit it out as true. Right? So again, it's a very important concept you understand. You need to understand. In AND logical operator, both sides has to be true in order to get a true out. OR operator, one side has to be true in order to get a true out. Exclusive OR mean one side has to be true, other side has to be false in order to get a true out. And then the NOT statement, basically the logical operator will flip whatever the answers you are getting there to opposite of what it is. So if it is a true, it's going to give you a false. If it is false, it's going to give you a true. So this is a very simple concept if you already know the basic math. However, I want you to know these things more comprehensively before you move on to most advanced and intermediate level PowerShell script. If you haven't watched my previous tutorials on PowerShell to beginners, please go back to my YouTube channel and please watch them. If you like these type of tutorials that teach fundamentals of PowerShell scripting, please, or you won't have any other interest in IT and information technology, please go and check my videos and subscribe to my channel. Until next time, thank you so much and have a nice day.